There is a particular silence a hall makes when 300 people stop breathing at once. I was holding a cup. It was warm through the pewter, which was wrong, because I had set it down cold an hour before, and I have never in my life been able to stop my hands from knowing a thing before my mouth catches up. Every torch in that hall was behind me. Every face in front of me was waiting to watch me hand it over. He was already reaching. He had that look he got when his body had decided something and his mind was arriving late, and I understood with terrible clarity that if I let him take it from me, he would drink it, because he trusted my hands more than he trusted his own. So I did the only thing left. I lifted the cup, and I drank first. It started 19 days before that, on a road, with a chicken. Her name was Bramble. She was the worst creature the goddess ever put breath into, and she had gotten out again. I was 23 that autumn, and I had spent most of it on my knees, in the dirt behind the still room. Which will tell you something about how my life was going. I had a place, and the place was small, and it was mine. Old Maud kept the still room for the village of Hollow Ash, and I kept Old Maud, which mostly meant grinding, straining, labelling, and being blamed for weather. In exchange I had a cot, a shelf of my own, and one hen who had never once given me an egg without making me earn it in a foot race. That morning she went straight up the bank and into the middle of the high road, and I went after her, because a hen in the road is a hen in somebody's pot. I heard hooves. I assumed it was a cart. I was wrong. Bramble went left. I went left. Bramble reversed with the tactical instinct of a creature who has never lost anything, and I came down hard on both knees in the road with a fistful of tail feathers and a mouth full of language Maud would have swatted me for. Behind me, somewhere far off, I registered that the village had gone quiet. Not market quiet. Not funeral quiet. The other kind, the kind where every shutter in a street closes at the same time and every hinge in the street is suddenly very well oiled. I did not look up. I had a hen to catch. I got 2 hands on her and stood and turned, and there was a horse. It was enormous and black and stopped, entirely stopped, in the middle of the road, perhaps 5 paces from me, and behind it were 9 mounted men in dark iron, also stopped, and none of them were looking at me. They were looking at the man on the black horse, and the man on the black horse was looking at me. I knew what he was before I knew who he was. You cannot mistake it. The road held its breath around him. Even the light seemed to be on its best behaviour. He was perhaps 30, dark-haired, one old white line of a scar through his eyebrow, wearing nothing that announced rank except the way 10 armed men arranged themselves around him without being told. He had one hand on the reins and one on the pommel of his sword, and he had not moved since I turned around. Bramble chose that moment to try to leave via my sleeve. I am sorry, I told the horse, because it seemed the safest party present. She is not usually like this. She is usually worse. Nobody answered. One of the men in iron made a small sound in his throat. The man on the black horse said nothing at all. He looked at me the way you look at a word in a language you used to speak. And then something came out of the trees. It came at a dead run, black as the horse and twice as unnecessary, and I want to be very clear that I had exactly enough time to think that is a wolf before it stopped in the road in front of me, sat down in the dust like a dog at a hearth, and thumped its tail once. Behind me, someone in the village screamed into what sounded like a folded apron. The wolf looked at the hen. The hen, showing the only good judgment of her life, went completely still. The wolf looked at me. It had eyes like the underside of ice. Then it stood, walked past me, took the entire hen out of my hands with terrifying delicacy, carried her 4 paces, and set her down at the boots of the man who had come down off the black horse without my noticing he had dismounted. There was a silence. That, I said, is my chicken. He looked at the hen. The hen looked at him. He had the expression of a man reading a battlefield report that has been written in verse. He crouched, one knee to the dirt in the middle of the road, and he picked up my hen with both hands like she was a helmet full of water, and he brought her back to me and held her out. I took her. Our hands did not touch. He made sure of it. I noticed that he made sure of it, and I noticed that his hand stayed exactly where it was for a moment after mine had gone, as if it had not been given the order to withdraw. "Your animal," he said. "Your animal," I said, and nodded at the wolf, who had lain down across the road as though it intended to stay there through the winter. His jaw moved once before he found anything. He does not do that. He seemed practiced. He has never done that. "You should tell him," I said. "He has clearly not been informed." There is a moment when a very powerful person decides how to take a thing, and everyone in earshot can hear the decision being made. The 9 men in iron had gone the particular kind of still that men go when they are about to have opinions later. He did not laugh, but something went through his face and did not come out the other side, and he turned it toward the trees to have it privately. "You are not afraid of me," he said. "I have been on my knees in a road for the last while, my lord. I have used up my dignity. Fear is expensive." "My lord," he repeated. Was that wrong? Behind him, the largest of the iron men cleared his throat and said, without any inflection whatsoever, "That is the king." Everything in me went very cold and very calm, which is what I do instead of sensible panic. I looked at the king of the Iron Territories, in the road, in the dirt on one knee of his trousers where he had crouched for a hen. "Then I apologize for my chicken," I said. "Do not." He said it too fast. He heard himself say it too fast. I watched him hear it. "She is. The road is public." "It is. You had every right to be in it." "I did." "Chasing a hen," he said, as though testing whether the sentence could hold weight. "She is a bad hen." "Yes," he said, "I could see that." He got back on the black horse. The wolf did not move. He had to say the animal's name twice, and the second time it stood with the specific slowness of a creature making a point. And it went to him. And it looked back at me once from the bend in the road, and then they were gone. And Hollow Ash opened its shutters, one at a time, to stare at me. Maud hit me with a cloth when I got back. Then she sat down. "Wren," she said, "do you know what you have done? Caught a chicken. You spoke to the king. He spoke first," I said. "Mostly he spoke second. It is difficult to say." 2 days later, a rider came from the fortress with an offer, and this is the part everyone gets wrong when they tell the story now. It was an offer. The king's household wanted a still-room hand for the winter. Maud's tinctures went up to the fortress twice a year, and someone had finally decided to keep the source closer. And I could say no. I asked the rider 3 times whether I could say no. He looked increasingly haunted and confirmed each time that I could. I thought about the cot and the shelf and the small good life on the edge of the road. I said yes. Nobody made me. I want that written down somewhere. Because of everything that came after, I chose the door, and I walked through it myself, and I took the hen. The fortress at Greywater sits on stone above a valley the colour of wet iron, and inside, past all that grimness, there is a kitchen the size of a barn where it is always warm and always 4 in the afternoon. I liked it immediately, which felt like a moral failure. The king's second was the enormous silent one from the road. His name was Gunnar. He met me at the gate, looked at the crate under my arm, and did not ask. "That is a hen," I said. "I can see that it is a hen. She is not a gift. No one," Gunnar said, with feeling, "has suggested that she is a gift." The court found out about me by the end of the week, because courts are made of ears. I was carrying a tray of dried yarrow across the back of the great hall on the 4th evening, The hall was full. The tables were down. The king was at the high seat listening to a man from the Eastern Holdings explain something about grain, with the expression of a man being slowly buried in it, and the wolf came off the dice. 300 people watched a wolf the size of a plough horse cross the hall and come to me and lie down across my feet. Not near my feet, across them. Full weight, a living hearthstone with opinions. I stood there with a tray of yarrow and a wolf on my boots, while the king of the Iron Territories closed his eyes very briefly, like a man asking the goddess for a favour he knew he had not earned. "He is," Halver started. Everyone in the hall leaned forward to hear how that sentence ended. "Warm," I offered. "It is a cold hall. I do not blame him." Halver looked at me down the length of that room, with something naked passing over his face, there and gone, and then Lady Dagny of Ashfell laughed the way you throw a stone. She was seated at his right hand, which told me everything about what she had been promised and by whom. Gold at her throat, 3 generations of grain treaties behind her, and the specific beauty of a woman who has never once had to be interesting. "How charming," she said to the hall. "The beast has found the kitchens." "The still room," I said. "I beg your pardon? I am from the still room, my lady." "The kitchens are through the other door." I shifted the tray. "It is an easy mistake if you have not been." I felt the hall take that in. I felt Gunnar, 20 feet away, stop breathing on purpose. I got out of there with my tray and my dignity, and a wolf following me the whole way to the still room door, where it lay down and stayed until nearly dawn. That was the first night something was left outside my door. If you want to know whether I survived my first winter in that court, whether the king ever managed to finish a sentence near me, and what his wolf did on the night of the naming feast, in front of everyone, stay with me and follow along so you do not lose the thread. It gets stranger from here. It gets much stranger before it gets kind. The gifts arrived like weather. A hare, first, laid out on the threshold with obscene pride. Then a boot. Not a pair. One boot, belonging to a knight who came looking for it at midday and could not meet my eyes. Then a knife. I picked it up out of habit, and my hand told me before my head did it was a still-room knife, thin-bladed, weighted at the heel. Exactly the shape you want for scraping root without bruising it. I had been using a mutton knife for 3 weeks and complaining about it to nobody. "He is a wolf," I told Bramble. "He does not know what a paring knife is." Bramble had no theory. 4th night, a book. Herb Law, the good northern one, worth more than my mother's house. It smelled of ink, and there was a smudge of it fresh on the leather where a thumb had been. I told myself wolves live in libraries. I told myself a great many things that autumn. The king, meanwhile, had begun malfunctioning at close range. I do not mean he softened. In the hall he was law itself. I watched him settle a blood dispute between 2 holdings in under a minute with 4 words and no visible effort, and I watched grown warriors go quiet when he came into a room the way water goes flat. And then he would turn around and find me holding a basket and set down a cup with such enormous care that it made a noise, and say something like, "The corridors are cold." They are. They have always been cold. That is often the way with corridors. Yes, he would say. And then stand there. And then leave. He left his library door open. Every night. A hand's width, light spilling into a corridor I had no business in, and I told myself for 11 days that it was a draught. On the 12th night I stopped in it. He did not look up from the map he was not reading. "You may come in or you may go. The doorway is the coldest part of the room." I came in. That was my choice too. The library at Greywater smelled of pine resin and old paper, and the particular smoke a fire makes when it has been going all day. He had a chair. There was a second chair. The second chair had no dust on it, which I noticed and filed, and did not say. "May I ask you something no one asks you?" He set down the pen. "That is a great many things. Why is your door open?" The fire moved. He looked at it instead of me, which I was learning was the closest he came to flinching. "There was a year," he said, "when this room was very full. My father's council, my brother, men who are dead now. The door was shut so often, I stopped hearing it close." He turned the pen over. "I found I did not like the sound of it, so I stopped making it. That is not an answer about me." "No," he agreed. "It is not." And there it was, the pause where the next word should have been, held so long I could hear the fire eat through a log. "They say you do not sleep," I said, to give him somewhere to put it. "They say a great many things. They say your wolf has been leaving offerings at a still-room door like a lovesick boy." His hand went still on the pen, entirely still, in the way a thing stills when it has been caught. "He is not," Halver stopped. Started again. "He does not consult me. That must be difficult. You have no idea." He said it with such genuine exhaustion that I laughed out loud, and he looked up at the sound like a man who had heard a bell in a town he thought was empty. I left before I could ruin it, but I stopped in the doorway, because I am not a good enough person to have gone straight out. "My lord." The knife was well chosen. "I will tell him," he said. 3 days later I found out what he meant by that. I was in his study fetching the ledger of stores, sent by Gunnar, entirely permitted. And the wind took the door, and the wind took a page. And I picked up off the floor a list of names. The naming feast comes at the turn of the year, and every household of the Iron Territories sends its daughters to be presented. And the king's household writes the list of who will be received. It is the oldest ordinary cruelty in the territories. Rank decides. Ash Fell heads it. A still-room hand from hollow ash does not appear on it at all. My name was on it. My name was on it, crossed out and written in again beneath. And crossed out. And written in again beneath that, 4 times down the margin in the same hand. Harder each time, the last one carved so deep the quill had gone through the paper. It was not a scribe's hand. It was the hand from the smudge on the book. I stood in that study for a long time. And I thought about a knife with the right weight in it, which no animal alive has an opinion about. I thought about a book of northern herb lore that answered a thing I had said aloud to a hen. I thought about a door that had been open for 11 nights, and a chair with no dust on it. I thought about a man who could end a blood feud in 4 words, and could not tell me the corridor was cold without needing 2 attempts. It had never been the wolf. It had been him. Every time. He had hidden a courtship behind an animal's reputation, because an animal is forgiven anything, and a king is forgiven nothing, and because if I refused a wolf, no one would ever have to know he had been refused. Something in me that had been amused stopped being amused. I put the list back exactly where it had been. I went down to the still room, and I ground bitterroot until my arms burned, and by the time the bowl was empty, I had stopped being a woman, watching a strange and funny thing happen at a distance. Let him leave his gifts. Let him leave his door open until the snow came in. If he wanted me on that list, he could come down to the still room and say so with his own mouth. Lady Dagny made her move 4 days before the feast, and she made it well. I came down at dawn to a still room that had been opened in the night. 6 months of work on the floor. Every jar of the king's winter tincture broken, the good silver measures gone, and a purse of Ashfell coin sitting in the wreck of it like an egg in a nest. By noon I was standing in the great hall, being accused of theft. Dagny did it beautifully. She did not raise her voice. She was sorry. She had hoped it was not true. She had heard the girl was ambitious, and one hears such things about girls from the villages, And of course, a household must be able to trust its stillroom, since so much of what a king swallows comes out of it. That last part landed in the room like a dropped plate. Half the court had watched a wolf lie across my feet. Now they were being invited to remember that I made the things he drank. The penalty for theft from the king's household is the road and a brand. Gunnar told me later it would have carried. That is how close it was. Halvar stood up. "The stillroom is under my hand," he said, "not the household's. Mine. Any accusation against it comes to me first." And none came. He looked down the hall at Dagny of Ashfell, who had a grain treaty in her pocket and 400 armed men behind her father's name. "You have accused my house of failing to notice a thief for 2 months. Which is it, my lady, that I keep thieves, or that I am blind?" The silence had teeth in it. "My lord, the Ashfell alliance is a matter of grain," he said. "This is a matter of my word. Do not put them on the same table again." He broke the betrothal negotiation right there, in front of the Eastern Holdings, 4 days before the feast, and every man in that hall started counting what it would cost him by spring. It cost him a great deal. I want that on the record as well. And then he came down off the dais and stopped in front of me, and the whole court watched the most powerful wolf alive fail entirely to find a sentence. "You are," he said. "I am fine, my lord." That was not what I was going to say. "I know," I said, "but it was going to take you a while." He made a sound. I am almost certain it was a laugh. He turned it into a cough with the skill of a man who has been doing that for weeks. That night I did not wait for the door to be open. I knocked on it, which nobody in that fortress had done in years, and when he opened it, I held up the list I had taken from his study. He looked at it. He did not lie. I will love him forever for the fact that he did not even try. "How long have you known?" "Since the knife," I said. "Wolves have no opinion about paring knives, my lord." "No," he said, "they do not." "Why?" He set the list down on the table and put 2 fingers on it as though it might get up. "Because I have been Alpha King for 11 years and everything I want, someone hands me before I have finished wanting it." He looked at the fire. "You cannot ask a woman with no rank if she wishes to be looked at by the man who owns the road she stands on. There is no honest answer to that question." So I let him do it. His hand moved once on the table. He wants what I want. He simply has no shame about it. And if you had swept the hair off your threshold and shut the door, I would have known, and no one would have had to watch me be refused. "Coward," I said. "Yes," he agreed, entirely calm. "You put my name on that list 4 times. I took it off 4 times. Why did you take it off?" "Because the feast is a market," he said, "and I would not have you stand in it. And because the last name I wrote on a list of mine was my brother's, for a border ride that I ordered, and he did not come back from it." He stopped. The fire ate through another log. I have not been certain since then that wanting a thing near me is a kindness to it. 3 sentences, and a life in them. I had asked for one true thing, and he had put it on the table between us like a blade he was done carrying. "Ask me," I said. "Ren, you have spent 19 days asking me through a wolf. Ask me with your own mouth, and I will give you an honest answer, and you will have to stand there and hear it." He crossed the room. He stopped 3 paces away, which was 2 paces further than he needed and exactly as far as he could manage, and the space between us sat there being the loudest thing in the room. "Come to the feast," he said. "Not as the still room. Come as yourself, where they can all see you, and let me stand up in front of the territories and be what I have been for weeks, which is a man who cannot think straight in a corridor." "Yes," I said. He closed his eyes. That was quick. "I have had 19 days," I said. "You are the slow one." The naming feast filled the hall to the walls. Every household of the Iron Territories, every daughter, every banner, and me in a borrowed green dress that Maud had wept over and Gunnar had personally carried up the hill. I made the king's tincture that afternoon, as I had every week since I came. Bitter root and yarrow for the old wound under his ribs that stiffened in cold weather, and he took it after the first course, publicly, every time. Because a king who is seen taking medicine is a king nobody is poisoning quietly. I brought the cup out myself. Dagny of Ashfell had planned that too, I think. The girl from the village carrying the cup up the length of the hall in front of everyone, so that when he fell, 300 people would already know whose hands it came from. There is a particular silence a hall makes when 300 people stop breathing at once. I felt it through the pewter. It was warm. I had set that cup down cold on the sideboard an hour before, and warm meant opened, and opened meant added to, and my hands knew it 2 full steps before my head did. Moonsbane goes in warm. It will not dissolve otherwise. He was already reaching for it. That look on his face, the one where his body had decided and his mind was arriving late, and he trusted my hands more than his own, and he would have drunk it in front of everyone, and been dead before the second course. I could have thrown it down. Then it would have been my word against Ashfell's, a wet floor, and nothing proved. So I lifted the cup, and I drank first, and I did not stop until I had taken enough that no one in that hall could ever say it was theatre. Then I put it down and said, "Into the silence. That is Moonsbane." It was added after I made it. I have just taken enough of it to prove that, and I would like the sideboard searched before anyone leaves this room. Moonsbane does not burn. That is the trick of it. It goes in like well water. And then the cold starts, and it starts in the bones. It came up through me in a wave, and it did not stop coming. I got one hand onto the edge of the table. I remember thinking, with great irritation, that I was going to ruin Maud's dress. I remember the sound the hall made when the King of the Iron Territories came over the high table. He got there before I went down. I heard him say my name, and it was not a king's voice at all. It was a young man's. And then the wolf was there, off the dice, through the crowd, scattering 300 people like grain, and it put itself down beside me and howled in a way I hope never to hear again. The cold went for my heart, and I fought it. I want that understood. I did not lie there and get rescued. I lay on the floor of the great hall, with my hand shut around a broken measure of pewter, until there was blood in it, and my own voice going out of me in pieces. And I said, "Sideboard, the cup was warm." Somebody put a hand on it, and it was not mine, until Gunnar had 5 men at the sideboard, and one of Ashfell's women had run 3 steps toward the north door and been caught by her sleeve. Then Halvar's arm was behind my shoulders, and he was saying something, and I was cold all the way through. And the last thing I got out was, "You are not as cold as you think you are, my lord." And I did not hear his answer, because I was gone. I did not die. Maud had taught me what Moonsbane takes and how much, and I had drunk enough to prove it, and stopped one swallow short of enough to finish it. And that swallow was the only calculation I made all evening. I lost 4 days. I lost feeling in 2 fingers for a season. There is a thin white line across my palm where the pewter went in that has never gone away and never will. I woke in a room that was not the still room, with a fire built too high, and a wolf asleep across the whole foot of the bed like a fallen wall. And the door was open. Halvar was in the chair beside it, and had been, Gunnar told me, for the better part of 4 days, hearing petitions in a doorway because he would not go further from the room than that. He did not make a speech. He looked at me for a long moment with his face doing the thing it had been trying not to do since a road in Hollow Ash. "They are all still here," he said hoarsely. "The territories. Nobody has gone home. I have not held court. You must hold court. I know. Halvar, you said my name. I did. He came and sat on the edge of the bed and took my bandaged hand in both of his very carefully, the way he had picked up a hen out of a road. I am trying to catch up to him, he said. I am so far behind him. You owe me nothing, not for the room, not for the fire, not for any of it. And if you want the cart to Hollow Ash, it is at the gate, and it will always be at the gate. But he chose you in a road with a chicken in your hands, and he has never once been uncertain, and I have been uncertain for 19 days. And I am done being uncertain, and I would like to say it in front of all of them tomorrow, if you will let me. I have thought many times since about what to say to a thing like that. What I said was, bring the chair. He was very still. What? The one in your library with no dust on it, I said. You have been keeping it for someone for 11 years. Bring it down to the hall and put it beside yours, and I will sit in it, and then you will not have to make a speech at all. The kiss came before the hall, not after. It was brief, and it was not what I expected, which is that nothing in me caught fire. Something in me set down. 11 years of a stranger's weight and 23 years of my own put down on a floor at the same time, and the quiet after it was the loudest thing I have ever heard. Then, he went and got the chair himself. He carried it the length of the great hall in front of the assembled territories and set it beside the wolf throne, and did not explain himself to anyone. Lady Dagny of Ashfell was not exiled. Halvar did something colder. He sent her home with her father's grain treaty intact and every one of her family's court appointments stripped, and had the sideboard testimony read aloud in each of the 5 holdings, so that she would live a long life in a house where everyone knew. Her woman confessed and took the road. Ashfell has sent no daughters to a naming feast since. It was not clean afterward. I will not pretend it was. 2 of the eastern holdings sat out the spring muster to see whether a king who put a still-room hand beside him could still hold a border. He could. Gunnar handled the first one, and Halvar handled the second personally, and I am told the second holding has been extremely agreeable ever since. There are still men in that hall who look at my hands before they look at my face. There are women who came to me for a headache tincture in the first month, specifically, to see whether I would flinch, and I did not, and they come now for real ones. A year on, this is what my life is. The still room is mine, and has 3 girls in it, and one of them is better than I was, which is a hard and good thing to learn about yourself. The library door does not get closed. There is a hen named Bramble, who lives in a fortress and has an opinion about the wolf throne, and there is a wolf the size of a plough horse who catches her twice a week and brings her back to me with insufferable pride, and a king who has stopped apologising for him. A letter came from Hollow Ash in the spring. Old Maud, 4 lines, no greeting. I hear you are Luna. I hope you are still labelling your jars. The road is fine. Send Yarrow. I sent Yarrow. Last night I came up the corridor late with cold hands and found the light lying across the stones, the way it has every night for a year, a hand's width of it. Waiting, he was at the map table pretending to read. He did not look up. You may come in, he said, or you may go. The doorway is the coldest part of the room. I did not go. I never do. He knows that. He leaves it open anyway, and that, if you want the truth of the whole thing, is the entire story of how the most feared man alive came to be married to a woman who was, on the day he met her, losing a fight to a chicken. So tell me this, because the court is still divided on it, and I would like to settle a wager, do you think he truly meant to hide behind that wolf, or was he hoping, every single night, that I would notice the ink on the book? Tell me your theory below. And if you want to know what happened the winter Ashfell's brother came to Greywater with an old claim and a very short temper, comment the wolf, And stay with me, Halva and I are not finished yet. Follow along, and I will tell you that one too. Where are you listening from tonight? Wherever it is, I hope your door is open.